everybody. Glad you came to see us all here in the mill. How cool is that place out there? I think it's going to be amazing. Thank you, Forrest. You've done a great job out there. We are here today with some women in the tech field, and fits right in with the STEM and STEAM program that we're trying to get out there. So I'm going to start with some introductions. I'll go right down. My name is Jennifer Kessel. I work for the LBL ESD. I have about a 10-year background with technology. I was the technology director for Fulham School District, and I've moved into a new role helping in the LBL ESD realm of things. So I get to help more than one district. We have 12 component districts locally, and it's in the tech field. So this is something that I started out in my mid-30s. So I was definitely a non-traditional student and then turned into a non-traditional field of study. And I am more than pleased with the support that has been given to me from LBCC. I had great teachers. I had great mentors here, but I did notice that there were a lot of male mentors here, which I am very thankful for. I wouldn't be where I am without them, but I also know that I would have loved to have had people that looked like me and had women in successful roles. And so that's kind of what we wanted to bring together here, is successful women, to show that this is a field that is broad and that has plenty of room and lots of big open arms for everybody, no matter what they look like. So I'll turn it over to Sisi here.
How many of you guys know me? All right. So I teach computer science here at LBCC, but my passion is working with Mid-Valley STEM Hub. I am so grateful to be able to do and have the opportunity to work with them. They do a lot of great work, so I gotta say thank you very much. And having this kind of event is important. So I've had 20 years. I know I don't look like it, right? I only look like I'm 15. But, I have 20 years of industry experience. I've worked at Intel and at Nipro, but my passion is teaching. I love teaching and learning from students. So I'm so grateful that I was, given this opportunity. I just want to say thank you very much, you guys, for coming out tonight. But too bad you guys didn't bring any desserts.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to be here. My name's Erin Hyde. I also work for Linn-Benton ESD in the IT department, supporting educational software for the most part. Been doing that for several years, and prior to that, worked with educational data analysis for Corvallis School District, and before that, with some kids in between. I did research science as an ecologist, wildlife biologist for federal agencies around the area. So a little different view of STEM, but lots of science technology experience.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know any of you, so hi. My name's Forey Cowles. I work for Agility Robotics as the production supervisor, and I've been with them for 4 years, and my background is pretty varied in terms of technology. I was never good at science and math in high school, and found that that actually progressed in my adult life, being able to dedicate more knowledge and time required to understand all of that kind of stuff. But I'm more of a hands-on background. I was an aircraft mechanic for almost 10 years, and that's what got me into being able to do robotics. I'm glad to be here and supporting this kind of event.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
So we have a few questions that we've put together to kind of guide the conversation along, and I think it starts, this work starts from birth on up for everybody. And as a child, we all had a dream of what our perfect job was going to be, what we were going to be when we grew up, and we had grand plans. And somewhere along the way, some of us got detoured for reasons that, whether it was family-based, whether it was what society thought we were supposed to do, the direction our brothers went, or our mothers or fathers, or whatever the traditions. And I think that it's very important that starting early to give everybody an idea that their path is wide open. And STEM and STEAM is a very large pool of jobs, as we heard here. And not everybody walks into it out of a 4-year college. Not everybody walks into it after any education. Your life experience can put you there too. And I think it's very important to keep that in mind as we guide ourselves, as we guide people around us. So what about, our first question is, what was your dream job as a child? And how does that vary from where you are now?
I wanted to be you, Jennifer. So honestly, I didn't have a dream job because I had parents that didn't have the opportunity to go to school. So I didn't know what that looked like. But my mom's goal was just get a job, finish high school and get a job. And then when it hit me like my sophomore year, I'm like, I want to go to college. But my parents didn't have the money because my mom was the one, the breadwinner. So I went to my advisor, Mrs. Marsha Reed, and she said, you have to get good grades and you have to be well-rounded. So in order for you to get a scholarship, that's what you need to do. So I would, volunteer at Good Samaritan Hospital. I would, join FBLA, which is Future Business Leaders of America. We didn't have STEM programs. And I worked hard to get, decent grades. I wasn't good in math and I wasn't good in science, but I did enjoy chemistry and physics. And I had a great teacher, Virgil Gosser. He's really great. But I didn't know what I was gonna do. But then I was like, okay, I like chemistry. Maybe I'm gonna go into dermatology. I'm gonna be a dermatologist. And then my first year in college, I'm like, oh no, I'm in the wrong field. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And then they're like, you're good in computers. You can fix stuff, and I'm like, oh gosh, okay, let's try this. And I went to my advisor and I said, do you think I could do this? Can I get do computer science? And he looked at me like, well, we don't know, we got to look at your grades and all that stuff. But I wasn't like the traditional 4-year student that finished. I took some time because I worked graveyard shift, right? Because it was, my mom's the only one working. So I worked graveyard shift and I would, study. I remember I worked graveyard, get off at 7 o'clock, go to a physics class at 8 in the morning, and I would pour ice water just so that I would wake up. And I remember my pencil would fling across the room. But I appreciate those struggles, right? Those, like she said, those shape, who I am. And I appreciate it because it helps me to understand what the struggles my students are going through. And it helps me to become, a more empathetic teacher about my students. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to do computers, minor in chemistry. And golly, I'm happy because I get to do what I love is, teach students, share my knowledge, and do fun stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, babbling on.
No, nothing to be sorry about there. And that's honestly, the teachers, the instructors here in the computer science program, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be where I am. I went through a divorce in February, right before June of graduation. And I was in Dave Becker's office going, what am I going to do? And that man saved my life many times. So I think the compassion and the empathy that I felt here at this college in particular helped me get to where I was. So teachers like you can definitely make a huge impact on whether or not the student finishes or doesn't finish.
I paid her to say that.
Dave gave me a little bit too, you know. No. All right, Erin.
Gosh, you just got me thinking about 4 different directions. So I wanted to be a doctor from the time I knew that you needed to pick a career in life. I was bound and determined to be a doctor. I love the idea of problem solving, both, medically, like house or something, but also just sort of finding solutions for people so they can live better lives. Super excited about that. Was just like completely driven. I went to an amazing public high school that had really amazing classes. Somebody told me you shouldn't major in biology if you want to be a doctor because everybody does that and that's stupid. That was really bad advice, by the way. So I was a physics major, and this is where you got me off task. I go to physics class as a freshman, and it was all men. And I don't think I ever thought about that until just now, but it was like all men. And I did great in AP Physics. I aced the AP Physics exam. I showed up in this Physics for Physics majors class. And I still don't know what subject they were teaching because it wasn't physics. Like, I had no idea. I was so lost. And I ended up at a community college the following summer retaking physics so that I knew what physics was about. Best instruction ever, and like totally changed the trajectory of my career. But that is an aside. But the other thing I wanted out of life was I really wanted a family, and I knew I really wanted a family. And as I was applying to medical schools and as I was talking to potential medical schools, it became super clear. And I think it's different now, but at that time, there was kind of one way to be a doctor, and there wasn't a lot of flexibility. There wasn't a lot of family support. So anyway, I made a quick decision that I was going to do something else, and I went to graduate school for wildlife biology, and I got a minor in statistics and got super into research. So anyway, through that field, I just got kind of by happenstance really interested in databases, relational databases. Mostly because I was obsessed with amphibians. So my poor parents are like, be careful what you introduce your children to, because if they fall in love with frogs, they will never be a doctor. But anyway, I was studying amphibians at a time that it was becoming apparent that they were all dying off. And we had all these little anecdotal studies of what happened in this pond or in that little town, but nobody could pool their data sets and actually have, a large, long-term, multi-country analysis to see what was going on. So we started this initiative called ARMY at the time. I didn't. People did, but I worked with it. And the idea was to try to standardize data collection so that we could actually look at large-scale data trends. And through that, I just got really into databases. And I'm like, why am I geeking out about databases? But I was totally geeking out about databases. So years later, after I had my family and I was trying to figure out next steps of my career, I just realized, like, these skills apply everywhere, not just to frogs, right? And I took it into the education system and started having just a blast showing schools that you could actually use data to make data-driven educational decisions. And it was super exciting. And then that has just sort of folded from one thing to another and brought me to LBL. So I never would have planned the route I took, but it's been great.
Awesome. When I was in elementary school, I wanted to be a botanist. Very left field, right? Yeah. And I think the reason I was so drawn to something like that was because it would satiate that natural curiosity I had about everything, and I just really loved flora and fauna, and I still do. And I think where that shift changed from biology and flora and fauna was when I was in my teen years. I watched my father refurbish old vintage motorcycles, and so I got to see the inner workings of mechanics and engines and all of the gears, and that really struck a chord in me. And so that interest stayed with me all through my 20s. And I actually didn't pursue the aircraft mechanic degree until I was in my late 20s. I kind of had to get there through a couple of different ways, but it's the path that led me here, and I didn't plan this. It just really worked out pretty well. I bounced around between jobs when I first moved here from Metro Detroit. I was 19 when I moved here, and not long after I moved here, I worked as a seamstress for several years, and from that industry, I learned that I really like to tinker with things that moved. And so that's what led me to get my aviation maintenance degree at Portland Community College. So just hop up on the I-5. But I never would have thought I'd end up where I am, but I'm incredibly grateful, and it's a job that I love doing. I'm also not a cubicle at a desk person, so it's very satisfying to be in a manufacturing facility and at a workbench.
Right. Yeah, I agree. You sparked me on the whole walk-in, and oh man, I walked into my first class here, and it was a Cisco class, and I walked in, and I'm like, there's 25 boys in this class, and like 2 girls, and then myself, and I was pretty much the oldest person, I think, in the class, almost. And I thought, did I walk in the right place? What was I thinking? Did I do the right thing? And I sat down and started talking to people and got to know some of the guys around me. And we had the best study group ever. And I didn't grow up nerding like that. I didn't game. I didn't build PCs. I played Atari and Nintendo, and I was really good at it. And but I wasn't making the games, right? So I wasn't engineering and designing that stuff. So I didn't know what all the components were on the inside. And my classmates in my study group, they brought in their old computers, and they told me how to build a computer, and they taught me here, and it all made sense. And that's when I knew that I was in the right place, because like you said, it's like something sparks in you. You don't really think you're going to do that stuff, but I'm like, well, that makes sense, and that plugs in there, and that goes there, and that's why that makes that happen, and then this is what you do, and then command line interface, and you know what I mean? Like, it all made sense to me, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to be a nerd. Look at that. So super happy doing what I'm doing. I think that one thing I like about everybody's answer is, I do hear some early childhood science driving forces, and somewhere it went the other way, for some of us, and that happens. I think that having a space and the ability to provide exposure, it's the exposure that everybody that sparked everybody. It's what they could see, even for a minute, tinkering with your father or playing with frogs, and nobody could put all the data together. There's having that exposure, and I think that's what the STEM Hub is all about, and I think that's what this mill space is all about, is having that aha moment for somebody, regardless of what part it is, and that drives you into the next stage. And real life happens, kids happen, all kinds of things happen, but being able to know that you have that somewhere down inside of you, and you can go back to it and build on it, and have the resources out there. Scholarships saved me. I was a single mom then, and after the divorce, and I mean, there's resources that we need to be able to provide, and having a spot like this is huge, I think, moving forward. And if you haven't heard of CTEC, which is a high school in Salem, it is the coolest place. And if I could go back to high school, I can't believe I'm saying this, but if I could go back to high school, that would be the only place I would go back to. They have an aviation. Did you?
I didn't know that.
Okay, so you should look up CTEC.
Okay.
But they just are going to be starting an aviation program and pilot.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, so there's now STEM and STEAM schools out there, which are the best thing ever. And so that's a little off topic here. All right, so what advice would you give yourself and others that are just starting out in this industry?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think it's important that it's easy for us when we're young. It's like, I want straight A's. I want this. We want the shining stars, the recognition. But I think you need to ask yourself, like, what is it that I want, right? What is it that moves me? The reason why I say that is because when I worked at Intel, right, and I loved it, but I had to ask myself, is this what I want to do? Because I felt like I was a robot, and that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a robot. I wanted to. I love helping people. I mean, that's my passion, and that's what drove me to be a teacher. Right? Is I think you need to ask yourself, what motivates me? What gets me up? I mean, like, seriously, I am jumping out of bed because I'm excited to come to class and see the students and interact with them. I remember when I was working at Intel, I was like rolling out of bed because I was like, oh my gosh, another day of something. So I would say, really take the time to ask yourself, what is it that drives me? What motivates me? And then if you want it, nothing's going to stop you. Don't let anything stop you, and don't give up. It may be hard, right? It may be hard, but steps. You're going to take steps. You're going to, it's not going to be a perfect path, but you're going to get there. But you just can't give up, and you keep going, and you find something to motivate yourself, and just go for it, because that's important, is not giving up, and know that you belong, right? It can be hard and it can be intimidating, but that is my advice. And that's what got me through school too, is like, and sometimes here at work too, is like, I may have my hard days, but I'm like, this is my passion. This is what I want to do. And there's projects that I want to do, and I'll bring it up and then be like, oh, we're not sure. But, you have to be the driving force. You have to motivate yourself. You have to be passionate about what you want to do, because if someone else has to motivate you, you're not in the right job. So that's all I have to say.
And I would say you really have to surround yourself with a peer group that will support you and find mentors. We know that women want to be experts before we dive into something. Like, that tends to be pretty true of women. We don't apply for jobs unless we have all the bullet points. Oh yeah, we can do these things. And culturally, men don't feel like they have to be as competent to do these things. And so I think when I was sitting in that physics class, I know I could have done that physics class. I did do that physics class. I felt like I didn't belong and I wanted to drop out. And so going out, finding the peer group so that you feel like you belong, finding the mentor to keep you kind of going. It reminds me, I hope I don't misquote it because it's been a while, but I read this book. It was called The Underdogs by Malcolm Gladwell, and he has this chapter in there about students of the same academic caliber who choose to go to a very prestigious school versus a middle-of-the-road school. And he found that academic success was better for the same academic level kid who went to the mediocre school because they perceived themselves as being capable, whereas the kids that went to the upper school felt like an underdog. And I think of that in going in, to any career. Like, you have to just be willing to take the risks and find a support group, because if you doubt yourself, you're not going to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would second that, definitely. The support group, it doesn't even have to be a group. It just needs to be one person. You don't need an army behind you to succeed in your goals. And it's not a sprint; it's a marathon. It's such a cheesy saying, but pace yourself. You're gonna mess up. That doesn't mean you should stop. And be honest with yourself too. Like, if you're having a hard time with something, ask for help. I think humility is what got me through a lot of my struggles, is knowing that you're not going to be perfect. I think as women, we're really hard on ourselves. Naturally, we are perfectionists. And so when you make a mistake, you're going to be really hard on yourself. And you don't want to go tell your male colleague that you just messed up. But after you get over that hurdle and that humility factor and let that ego fall away, you get better at asking for help. And honestly, that's what got me through it, is just asking for help when I needed it, even if it was from a male counterpart. Through that, I found people that supported what I was doing and my efforts. And and again, the mentoringship is an amazing way. I didn't have much of a mentor system when I was in school, but I had a couple of teachers that reached out and lifted me up, and that was just enough, to know that someone believed in you, and it's gonna be hard. Like, there's no sugarcoating that, but it'll be worth it.
Great advice. And I know, the whole idea of being a woman making a mistake, even if your male counterpart makes the same mistake, we're way harder on ourselves. We might even say, oh, it's not that big a deal, and then 2 days later you do the same mistake and you're kicking yourself for a week afterward, and we don't give ourselves permission to fail, especially in an environment that is not woman friendly. And so that's a big deterrent, and that was hard. Before I was in technology, I was in law enforcement, so that was another not real woman-based field, and so that was another learning experience for me. And so I kind of had that in my back pocket walking in, and I thought, if I can do that, I can do this, right? And finding that support group, 1 person, 3 people, whatever. I did make my cookies to bring in for the guys that helped me, with the computers and stuff. We each had our strengths, and we worked well together. So I definitely think that listening to your gut is huge, and asking for help. You can't feel bad for asking for help. You don't have to know everything. That's why you're learning. That's the whole purpose of learning. I know that technology-wise, I'm one of the people that, if the car won't start, I'm rebuilding the engine before I'm looking in the gas tank. So, I've made mistakes, and I definitely tear things apart before I look for the simple stuff, because it can't be that easy, right? It's really just that one comma that you put in your code somewhere instead of a semicolon. It really is. So definitely feeling like you support yourself is first for me. Knowing that I could do it and believing in myself, and hearing somebody next to me saying, yeah, you're right, you can do this. That is a huge motivation. So with that being said, and all the great help out there, do you think that there is enough done to help women get into the tech industry? Do you see that happening in real life, in your life?
So when I first started my first computer science class, I only had like 5 female, and I remember my instructor saying, okay, look to your left and look to your right. Some of these students aren't going to be here, right? So I think there's been a lot of work, but there's more. I mean, like right now we have Chick Tech, we have women, we code, girls who can code. A great one that I've worked with is Jason Galbraith. He's at the Beaverton High School, and he's a great supporter, for helping women, and having these organizations, these nonprofit organizations too. But I think there's more that can be done, especially when you're in a male-dominated field, right? Is that you feel like I'm not as good, and I have those days, right? I mean, if you see my department, I feel like sometimes like I'm not confident, I'm not good enough, right? But you have to ignore that's just noise, and just say, I belong here, and I could do the job just as good as anybody else, and try to get your team, involved in the process. I think that's important. But to answer your question, yes, there has been work that has been done to help women, in tech. But I think the conversation needs to be more, and I think there's more work to be done. So again, that's my answer.
I agree. I mean, I'm really grateful for the things that are out there now and that weren't, and they're doing a fantastic job, and it's making a difference. But when you, I mean, STEM's a really broad field, right? And the areas that have more sort of gender neutral divisions tend to have a more human face, or a more, like environmental engineering. Suddenly there's a lot of women that are interested in that, or biotechnology or biomedical. I think women can see themselves in those fields because they know what it is, they know what it does, they know how it applies to them, and they know, a lot of women are really good in math and science now. The young girls are, but I don't think they can see themselves. I don't think we've done what it takes that girls know what it means to be a computer programmer, or what it means. I mean, certainly your field, like, and I mean, I have a daughter who's 16, and she doesn't know what she wants to do, and she's a great student. She could do whatever she wants. And every time I suggest a sort of a STEM-y career, I can't see myself doing that. And I think that's where we haven't finished. There's still a lot of work to do. And then the second, I think, is retention. Women aren't staying in STEM fields, and we need to really look at why that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's hard to not think about some of the factors that we're talking about tonight, potentially being one of them. But much to, emulate what you guys were saying, that yes, there has been awesome work that's been done. The fact that we feel comfortable enough to even have a place means that there's work that's been done, but we still have a lot more work to do. We are half of the world's population until we're represented that way in all industries, and there's work to be done.
Yep, I agree.
Absolutely.
I agree. And these kind of events, right, that we're having, the tech conferences for women, which I'm a part of, there's several groups out there, Women in Tech, and I there's a lot of celebration out there with a room full of women, and I've been to conferences where there's groups that celebrate that, and I look around those rooms though, and I don't see men in the rooms with us, and I think that is a huge part of how we move the needle forward. Is there needs to be just as many men in that conversation and in that room and in that conference celebrating as there are women, because yes, there is definitely power when you walk out of a conference celebrating women. You feel that, but you don't want, we're all on the same team, and we really need those men to help celebrate with us. And I think that work is something that we need to push and have men. So I love Women in Tech conferences. I love women panel, in tech. I love this idea, but I also like looking out and seeing some male faces out here listening and hearing what we're saying and volunteering your time to be here as well. I appreciate that, and I think that's part of the work that I would like to help with, is having more men involved in this. I had a lot of great men mentors, but I really would love to have seen a man and a woman up there. Not just women and not just men. Like, we want to be equally represented, and I think that that's very important. So how do you feel about strictly, just Women in Tech and those kind of events that are basically women-centric?
So I think there's more than just Women in Tech conferences. I know that I was in a hackathon, and they wanted, non-binary and gender neutral. So there is work, to be inclusive and to have everybody be part of, a conference or a hackathon. And I think the work for that is just getting started. But I think everybody, they say this CS for all, it's STEM for all. Anybody that wants to should be able to. And I think that's important, is whatever field you want to go into, you're welcome to, and you can do it.
Yeah, I've never actually been to a all women conference, but I've been to a few sort of breakout sessions during a larger conference, and I went in a little little skeptical, like, this is a little weird. Why are we making like a spotlight on this? And it ended up being great. And for two reasons. One, it was an amazing opportunity for mentorship and peer group support, and I didn't see that coming, and it was really uplifting. And I've gone on to form those relationships and get support and grow in areas because of those opportunities. But then secondly, I would be sitting in these conferences having these thoughts, my eyebrow raised, and not say anything. And then I'd be in this group and for whatever reason feel more confident, say something, and the person next to me is like, I know! And so we started these great conversations, and then we pulled in some male colleagues and like actually made some forward progress in some areas that hadn't come up otherwise. So I don't know, it's a really nice, like any affinity group, it was a nice safe space that helped us feel included.
Yeah. I really appreciate that we're having this kind of conversation about being inclusive for everyone, gender-wise, non-binary-wise, gender minorities, because we are certainly stronger together than we are separate. And I think that we might be at that point where, you were saying that we should all feel enabled to empower each other despite whatever gender you might identify as. And hope that we have the support of male colleagues just as much as we do as our female colleagues, because it's not a fight against one or the other. We're stronger together and we'll be more successful if we work together. So I think, that is the next step, is understanding that, we are not two separate, but we are just all in the same pot together.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and it's definitely very empowering to be in a room full of people that support you, and you know that, and you don't have to question that. But real life is, we don't live in little groups of just people that look like us, talk like us, work like us. So that if we can take some of that confidence that we get from those groups and apply it to outside life, that's also a progress that needs to happen, where you feel comfortable in a group of mixed company with that eyebrow raised to actually say something, like, knowing that there could be somebody that isn't looking just like you beside you that will still say, I know, right? So having the confidence to take what we learn in our safer groups and apply it to real life is another opportunity for growth, in my opinion. So my last question on here is, how do you feel like having access to a space like that's next door would have helped you or influenced you making your choices on where you would want to pursue your career and your passion? How do you think a place like that would have made an impact in your life?
So first of all, I just want to say thank you to Forrest Johnson, Mid-Valley STEM Hub, to make this happen. I think this was something, a conversation that started probably like 5 years ago, and so we're seeing it now. So kudos and thank you very much for that. I think having a makerspace is important because this is where students can come in and get their creative juices flowing and collaborate, because that's what the industry is all about, is working as a team and collaborating. So if I had something like the makerspace, I think that I would have done really well in my classes, and I would have, been able to network more and feel confident in that environment, where if you're sitting in a classroom with 400 people and you don't get to interact, then you're not going to feel like you're included. So I think having a makerspace is gonna really help me in like the networking and working in a team environment.
Yeah, and I think technology is sort of in its infancy, I think. And if I think of like what are the 15 most common tech jobs, they're not the 15 most common tech jobs 10 years from now, right? And I think those new jobs are going to happen in the creative space, right, where the different areas of tech kind of intersect and overlap, and that's where these things happen, in a makerspace, or where collaboration happens. And then the second thing that would have really excited me about it is I'm ashamed to say this, but I was terrified of weight rooms for years because it's so scary. There's like this culture I didn't understand. Like people work out and then they're gone for 30 seconds and then they're back. And like, is it okay to put the weights off or are you supposed to keep them on? I was super intimidated. And then I took this like little class where they gave me a tour of the weight room and like showed me how it worked. And then I loved lifting weights. It was awesome. And the weight room is sort of, it's very similar. I walk into like a wood shop or a machine shop and I feel super overwhelmed. I don't understand how it works. I don't know how you treat the space, how you clean the tools. And I wish I'd had early access to just a makerspace where you get some familiarity and comfort with the equipment and it doesn't feel so foreign.
Yeah. I would have been so happy if something like this existed when I was young. I think I probably would have found my path a lot sooner had I had something like this. But I'm so glad it's here now. That means that, you know, the steps are being taken to make that those goals a little bit more clear for people who see something like that in their future. Yeah, I'm very happy it's here.
Yeah, I agree. I think exposure helps dispel some of those fears, right? Of, you know, I don't want to look like an idiot. I don't want to cut my finger off. You know, I don't want to start a fire and burn the building down. Like, those are all the things that run through your head, you know? You don't know.
Are you describing me? I don't know that.
You know, and I think that we are going to be building things in this space that are more than the thing that is at the end of the process of the actual machine. And I am very excited to see where this goes. I think if I would have had access to a place like this, you know, I would have probably, like you said, ended up in where I'm at and not had to take so many little zigs and zags, although they do make me who I am, and I'm not wanting to undo all those. But it would have been nice to have the expressway, I think. And so I think we need to keep that growing and keep more spaces like that happening and promoting. So that's what I'm all on board for. That was all my list of questions here. I do want to give you an opportunity to say anything that you would like to say, and then we can open it up for some questions. Anybody have anything that they'd like to add or we missed, or you feel like you need to get out there?
I would like to say that if you, this is going to sound very strange, but my intelligence is not computer based. It's very much mechanical and kinesthetic, get your hands on it kind of based. So don't feel like if you don't have those computer smarts that you are not going to succeed in a tech field. It still remains today. I work with very intelligent and smart people and I let them do that computer stuff and I go fix robots. So you know, there's a place for everyone in the tech industry, and don't feel dissuaded if it's not maybe one of the overarching careers that is available kind of in that full view, but there are little narrow paths that you can take that might make you happier. And so the glamorous jobs are nice, but there's also some less glamorous ones, and they are still in the tech industry.
Okay, well, I'd like to open it up to, does anybody have any questions for anyone on the panel? Any comments that they'd like to say?
I guess I have a question. I'm just curious, since you guys are all very successful on your career, what's the secret when you balance the work and study and life? Because it's really hard for me. So, like any trick, like you can identify, oh, this is time for me to work, this is time I just relax, because we can always work all day. The society has special expectations from women, like they wish that they think, okay, wife should stay at home, cook for me, blah blah blah. So like, how do you guys like try to adjust that part?
I personally, was a single mom and did it all, and you're expected to do it all, right? And trying to find that balance. Honestly, I just had to work myself to a point where I hit my, you can't do this anymore. For me, that's what it took. I had to hit that wall and go, what are you doing? And then I started backing off and prioritizing my my family and my sanity, and I had to take care of me, because that's what I noticed I stopped doing, was taking care of me. I stopped going and getting my nails done. I stopped taking 30 minutes at night and reading my book. I stopped doing the things that I like to be doing, and there was no magic. It was just, I looked in the mirror one day and went, what are you doing? Why do you look like that in the mirror? Why do you look like you haven't slept in 3 days? So again, I had to turn it around and listen to my gut and put my phone down from work. You know, kids, you can't really say, hey, I'm going to not stop talking to you after 8 o'clock. That's not really the best parenting advice, but for me, it was just making a limit, a hard stop at a certain time for my work, and drawing that line. But it took me actually running myself into a wall, going, oh my God, that was my mistake. But I learned from it, and that's how I did it.
Work-life balance. I think really it's important for you to, limit yourself, in what you can do, because I think it's important, like, what is your primary job? Your primary job for mine is I need to teach, advise, and have office hours. And I'm very, very, my communication with my students is I want to help you. There's only one of me, and there's many of you. So, I've created the embedded tutor program where we have embedded tutors in the classroom. And I tell them all these different resources, because self-care, mental health is very important. And you need to be able to, have a life with your family, but then also fulfill your duties. And it's hard, and sometimes you always want to read the emails at night and respond to emails, but you have to say, this is my limit, and I need to be there for my kids, and I need to take care of myself, because if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to help anybody else.
I just want to listen to more advice in this area. My career took a lot of turns because I was so unwilling to compromise in that area. I had a really rigid view of how I wanted to be a mom, and it turned out to be the way I wanted to be a mom, and it was awesome for me. It was super detrimental to my career and my earning potential, and that sort of stinks, and I'd like to think that there are better options now. I think there are better options now, just being my kids are only not that much younger than me, but just that one generation or a couple generations made a big difference. But my earlier jobs, you got advancement by working yourself to death, and that was super unhealthy. And maybe a plug for my current employer, but I think everybody there is extremely family focused and extremely proud of the work that they do professionally. And I think it really generates this steam. You're like, oh, they're taking time for their family. I think I'm going to take some time for my family. And now we're working really hard, and we're really excited about the work we're doing. It's super healthy. So I think if I could step back 15, 20 years in my career, I would demand more of that. And I think the rest of the groups would be like, ooh, this is nice.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually get better work done.
Yeah.
You're happier. So I don't know the answer. It's challenging, but it pays off when you are in a working group that values home life.
And that does make a huge difference. You spend so many hours at work compared to, if you compare your hourly, contribution at work to, there's just not enough hours to have the same contribution at home, right? And having an employer, and that's where feeling confident in yourself and feeling confident in what your contributions are to your work, and having to not feel like you have to work yourself to show your worth, and you have to be half dead when you go to work, and be the one that's responding at 8 o'clock to an email or whatever, having that confidence helps you set those boundaries, and then the modeling from above. We are very lucky at our place of employment where the work-life balance is talked about by the leadership and all the way down, and it's accepted that even if it's the boss, when they're off, they're off. And it really does, it's a culture change that I see happening more and more, but it's still not all the way there as far as employers go. But setting your personal boundaries, that's where, and I admire that you do that, because like a lot of kids, one you. I mean, that's that ratio is not good for being able to split yourself up in a zillion pieces. Sorry, and then.
Yeah, I don't really know how to touch upon that. My children are animals. I have a dog and a cat.
Oh.
And
Congratulations.
So, thank you.
Good choice.
Thank you. They don't require daycare, really. So I feel like I've had it much easier than women who've chosen a family path. That was never mine. But having that personal boundary is, it's really hard to almost be your own boss and say, put work down, it is me time. I think it could be as simple as silencing your phone or putting your phone in another room. That has helped me a lot. Like, leave your phone in the kitchen and you go relax. And making sure that when you do wake up in the morning, you feel refreshed enough that you want to do what you're doing. You're not burning yourself out, because at that rate you're only giving 75% of your effort, because you might have exhausted yourself the night before. There's no easy answer, and I know that some people love working night and day, but to be able to pace yourself is, I think, really important.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Yes,
One thing I want to share, because I love being on a college campus, and just kudos to this panel and pulling all of this event together, is for the students in the room, is informational interviews. There's a hidden economy of jobs, and we don't know what we don't know. Your world is so vast. It's amazing. And we don't even know if you're going to be working for one employer. You might be lifelong consultants. If we can ever uncouple healthcare from a job, you're going to have a specialty, and you'll come in for 3 months, 6 months, a year, and you'll have this project management, robot, like whatever that's going to be. And so it's a really big world out there. So what I just want to share is informational interviews, getting access to people, and people love to help you. So 15, 20 minutes, 2 to 3 great questions. People love to talk about what they do. They're usually passionate about it. And explore, because the minute you have a resume in your hand and you're out looking for a job, it's really uncomfortable. So don't hold those cards close to your chest. And I'm a big believer in LinkedIn, as Twitter is falling apart. LinkedIn is leaning into that. So have a LinkedIn profile and find people, and just Google jobs and find people in LinkedIn who have that job title. And if they're in Oregon or whatever, we have Zoom, and you all know how to use that now. Before, we would always do that 20-minute cup of coffee. Is ask about their jobs, or a company you're interested in, and what kind of jobs are there. So explore. When I worked at a university, we assigned 10 informational interviews a year, freshman and sophomore year, because it helped you lock into your major by junior year, and we could still get you out and graduate in 4 years. And so that's my tip, and access to wonderful people. So I don't know if you all have LinkedIn, and you have LinkedIn, but you should all connect. You're 6 connections away from around the world when you're on LinkedIn. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'll put a little plug in. When you're thinking of STEM and science backgrounds, so I fell into 2 jobs that were STEM science related, but in administration. So people don't quite think about those things either, even if you're a business major or in any type of other kinds of majors. So I actually worked for a resort in the engineering department, where I had to learn everything. I had to learn some carpentry, I had to learn some, the bathroom's plugged up, who do I call? I had to learn all those different sectors in engineering, and I learned a lot, actually, from the painters, from the carpenters. This is how you fix these certain things. And I always had that curious nature. My mom would always say, oh, when you were little, you like to take apart things and you put them all back together. I was like, oh, okay, I never knew that. But it's always interesting to see how your path goes. So I worked for a huge resort on the Big Line in Hawaii. Then later on in my career, I ended up working for a telescope company. And so it was still science related, and I got to learn, astronomy and what they do and how they fix telescopes and what they do to the mirrors and how they polish it. So, you may not be totally in depth in the science field, but don't rule those jobs out either, because they can be very interesting. I also got to talk to people that were Nobel Prize winners, So it's all these things that come within your work career. So kind of think outside of the box as well. So
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't always happen into your job because you followed the exact, yellow brick road to get there. I actually ended up in technology because I got laid off. There was a large layoff when I worked in corrections and law enforcement, and I went to an LBCC job fair, and I walked around the entire job fair, and at every table there was something technology based. It didn't matter if it was the lottery, it didn't matter if it was forestry, it didn't matter if it was education, healthcare. It didn't matter. There was some dribble of technology in every aspect. And I thought, okay, so if I go in and get some technology degree and some experience in that, then I'll see where I land. And then I landed in K-12 and found that was a passion, because you don't get it, you get into it because you love it. It's the way it works in K-12 in education. But I mean, I thought it's something that interests me, and like the field was so vast. So whether it's flying drones in the forestry program, whether it's in the lottery realm and you're, working on the lottery machines and that kind of stuff. There was just, even at the temp agency, they needed somebody to update their website with the jobs that were available that they were looking to fill. So it's just such a vast area that I thought there could be something for me in it, and turns out there was. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
Kind of along the lines of like LinkedIn and everything, and like finding like more job connections and learning about those career pathways. I was wondering, like, what do you think is like the best resource for finding and discovering more like careers and pathways and everything without like fully committing to a career or a job?
Well, I think that you had the great, ideas is putting yourself in the atmosphere that you'd like to explore more about, asking questions, that kind of doing a tour at a place. You can call companies and they will let you come look and see what it is that they do. Being a student here, I know LBCC reaches so many different places to help you find a job. You have to get CWE, right? You have to have those credits. You can do that, and for whatever the one credit fee is, they can match you up in an internship and a program. Volunteering in a business or an area that you would like to learn more about and see if it's something you want to do. Volunteering is a great way to do that as well. And people are always needing help, and they want to teach you, regardless of what you think, whatever business it is, whatever field it is. They want to have somebody that wants to be there, and you're volunteering. That shows you want to be there, and that's a great pathway into securing actual paid employment. That's my 2 cents.
What's your major?
I'm a high school
Oh,
student.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's a good question. So I would say, like, to do job shadows are very important. You need to create the opportunities. So you could reach out to somebody in LinkedIn. You can send them an email and say, introduce yourself, and I'm interested in doing a job shadow or a tour. I think it's important to, figure out, what you want to do, and then, create those opportunities for yourself. Like you could do, like volunteering is an important thing. But if you want to, if you're interested in making a little bit of money, I would recommend like Fiverr, people per hour. So they have, different jobs that you can kind of get a preview of. You're not committed to just one job. And another thing is like personal projects, because that's going to build your portfolio. And then, when you create a project, you can put that into your portfolio. And as you, do more personal projects, you're going to see that that is something that you're going to take to your hiring manager. And they're going to see that, hey, this person took the initiative to start something and finish it. And that's what hiring managers, are looking for, is someone that can take the initiative to do something, plus also, be able to work with, have great people skills, teamwork, or all that stuff.
Yeah, those are great ideas. And I guess I would add, it's really uncomfortable, right, to ask to do job shadows because it feels super awkward. But you think you know what your best friend's dad does, and then you go watch him do it, and you're like, that's not what I thought he did. It's really helpful. And I think when you do internships and job shadows, a lot of times you're like, this is not what I want to do, but I saw this person doing something over there, and you pretty quickly figure out what you're interested in.
Yeah, just getting that exposure. When I was interested in becoming an aircraft mechanic, I job shadowed, and it was just I was lucky that I had a friend that was already doing that kind of work, and it just took a day for me to decide that this is what I wanted to do. So job shadowing, I think, is a really easy way to find people who love what they do, because if they love what they do, they will want to show you.
Youth science is something that maybe are you implementing youth science as some of the STEM aptitude? Okay.
We aren't, but all the high schools have that available, right, Darren?
So it's
across the counties,
yeah, so that's one place to start. And then what we did is think about that'll help you what your aptitudes and interests are. And so, and then I always say, think about industries like nonprofit, for-profit, environment, animals, people, machinery, what does that look like? Because there's probably a job within those industry clusters that are going to get you excited. And you can go on their website, you can Google the jobs that they're hiring, you can kind of see the types of jobs that they have at their company, but just kind of Googling and researching. But first we always started with the students, like, what do you think you want to do? What do you think? Where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself? And then you can go in and start to Google those companies, and usually you end up in their jobs page or their careers page, and that's really telling to see. And there's creative titles out there that you've never ever could have imagined what they are. But the great thing is it has job descriptions, qualifications, and it tells you a little bit about what it's at.
And job fairs. Job fairs are another good place to do that short questions, long questions, whatever. They usually send some recruiters and some passionate people that want to talk about their business there, and being able to walk around. There's a large variety of people, generally speaking, at like one of the LBCC job fairs or something like that, and you can ask questions, see what jobs are available, and that's another large in-person. I know everything has gotten very digital, and I guess it's a little backwards of me to suggest in-person things before I do LinkedIn, because I should be more supportive, but I'm one of the weird nerds that don't have a Facebook account. I do have LinkedIn. I do like LinkedIn, but it's more fresh. I didn't do Twitter. Like, I don't, I'm not all about that. I really think that you stand out if you go somewhere. Everybody can sit at home in their pajamas and send in an email. I'm not joking. If you're serious about a job, if you're serious about a place that you want to show your interest, you will stand out if you walk into somewhere and stick out your hand. And I know it's hard and it can be uncomfortable, but you will set yourself apart from even the shiniest email that they're reading.
Pacific Northwest Youth Career Expo is the most amazing thing. If you can get your school to get a bus and take you up to Portland. It used to be in May, now it's March, but they do it by industry cluster, and it's about 400 companies, so you can go into media and everybody who's filming movies, in Oregon, to manufacturing, to Nike is there, to Pullman, it's healthcare. So they cluster it, and then it's all hands-on. Nobody gets to have a table and hand out business cards and candy. It's women in the trades. You are drilling, screws into boards and things like that. But Pacific Northwest Youth Career Expo, and buses come from all over Oregon to that every year. It's pretty spectacular. It is at the Portland Convention Center, but it'll blow your mind open.
Cool.
Here's another cool thing. The Saturday Academy does these apprenticeships in science and engineering. But even if you can't do that for whatever reason, what I've had a lot of fun doing with students is just pretend like you're going to do it. You can read all the different opportunities, and it really helps you figure out, oh, this is what that kind of scientist does, and this is what that kinds of engineer does. And there's been a few times where we've just called the person. You know, if these are people are interested in doing that kind of apprenticeship, they love students, they want to talk to you. So if you find somebody at HP that's doing this thing that's really cool, just, I'm not actually applying, but could you show me around?
Yeah.
They'll do it.
Oh, all right. I think that we've come to the end of our time. It has been such a pleasure. This is our first go round at this, but I think first of many. So please tell people that this is happening. Pay attention to the LinkedIn. I know that we are out on that, and there's other social media for the STEM Hub. And we thank you for coming, and we thank the STEM Hub for hosting this. And I'm so glad that you guys, wonderful ladies, joined us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.